Hello there, Bill Barney with All Things Possible TV, and today I'm going to talk to you about a subject that, boy, I struggled a long time with, and that is how to finally forgive yourself. How do you let go? How do you put those things behind you? And as I worked, I didn't write the book on forgiveness, but I did write a book on forgiveness. This is my book, Shining Light Within 5 Steps to Lighten Your Soul Through Forgiveness. And in this book, I have, through my healing practice, I've helped several people work to forgive others of some of the most horrific things that you can imagine, things you consider unforgivable. And hence the reason I wrote that book. But what I found for myself, that many times what works to forgive other people does not work when you're trying to forgive yourself. It's just like it doesn't work. You still feel bad about it. How do you know if you feel bad about it? Well, you check in with yourself. Think about what happened, the incident, whatever, and notice what you feel. If you feel any emotions, regret, shame, guilt, anger, whatever it is about what happened, about the event, then you know you have more forgiveness work to do. And so that's what I want to talk to you about today is, what do you do when everything else that you work to forgive everybody else works, but when you can't let go and you still feel bad about the mistakes that you've made? Before we get into that, I'd like to invite you to go to our website, www.allthingspossible.biz, right here, and check us out. Join our community. Go ahead and join our YouTube channel as well. But I invite you to join our community. We have lots of fun stuff there, lots of information, lots of free information to help improve your life. So, how do we forgive another person? So let's say that you've checked in. It's like, yeah, I still feel guilty. That memory comes up for me quite often. I think about this thing that I did bad. And how do I do that? I'm going to go ahead and put my book down here. Let me just tell you a story, an example that from my life that I actually do share this story in the book, and we call the person Denny, although he was my best friend growing up, and his real name wasn't Denny, but we want to protect privacy a little bit. And lived in a small farming community in Utah, and not a lot of close neighbors around, really busy on the farm, but when I did have time, our closest neighbor, which is about a half a mile away, was Denny, and he was just a year older than me, but we were inseparable. We did all kinds of things together, from hunting for rabbits or anything. We lived next to a mountain. We'd ride dirt bikes. We would just get together and hang out. And we were the best of friends for the first 15 years of our life. And all at once, he come to his birthday party and he invited everybody, and I didn't get invited. And I felt really bad about it. I wasn't sure why, but I just kind of let things go, and we let our friendship, that was the end of our friendship there. And it took me a long time, because I'm slow to process. It took me a while to figure out what had gone wrong, but then I realized I'm a smart aleck. I have kind of a quick wit, and I have what I was a developing sense of humor at that point. But I was always making someone else the butt of my jokes. And so anything he said or did, I made it the butt of my jokes, and he just finally got tired of it. I know that's what happened. I wasn't fun to be around because I was always putting him down. Now, to me, it was all in good fun, but it wasn't good fun. That was my mistake. That was my development. And we did reconnect a few years after high school, and had some good times together, and some enjoyable times. Went riding up in the mountains and stuff like that. But our friendship was never the same. And yet here, 30 years, 35, 40 years later, well, not 40, but 30, 35 years later, I would be thinking about something that I would think about Denny, and I'd just get this pit in my stomach. I'd cringe sometimes, and it just like, I just felt these awful things. You notice what you feel when you think of the situation, and I couldn't let it go. Every time I did this, I'd say, I forgive myself for being a jerk with Denny. I forgive myself for making fun of me, making me the butt of my jokes. And I release this and I let it go. Now I do everything that, and I did energy processes, everything that I would do to forgive someone else, and it didn't work. It just kept coming back. It didn't go away. And I did a lot of soul searching, and experimenting, and I finally come upon a process that it's a little trick you play with the mind that was able to work. So the reason, and I'm going to share that process with you, the reason that it's so hard to forgive somebody else, or to forgive ourselves, is because we can forgive another person for what they did. Even what they did yesterday or what they did 20 years ago. It's like, you know what, that's okay, they didn't know. But when we go about forgiving ourselves, it's hard to separate who we are right now with who we were 2 weeks ago or 20 years ago. Because it's all in our head. We live in our head. And it's hard to separate that. And so with this incident with Denny, I would be thinking, oh, but I know better. I know not to make people the butt of my jokes. And how can I, you know? And so I'd sit and beat myself up some more about the way that I was with Denny. And so what I finally did is, it's a little mind trick, but I imagine talking, now I was 15 years old when this happened. So I imagine maybe one of my 15-year-old sons come to me and explain the very same problem to me. So I imagine, I'm trying to move so this light doesn't shine on my chin. So it explained and mentor my 15-year-old son if he come to me and says, Dad, you know what, I just feel like such a jerk. I've been treating my friend, I've been making him the butt of my jokes, and he's sick of me, and I feel terrible about it. And so I talked to myself, to my 15-year-old self. This is what I did. And I just sat down, I talked out loud. I didn't do it in public place because, you know, I didn't want people to know. I didn't want it to be, you know, it needs to be private. And I just says, hey, little Bill, you know, 15-year-old Bill, it's okay. You made some mistakes, you were rude, you were obnoxious, but you know what? You didn't know then what you know now. And you know that in your heart you wasn't trying to hurt him. And it did hurt him, it bothered him. But I can forgive you because you didn't know. You didn't understand what you know now. And so I can forgive you, and I can let that go. And I went on and explaining, just like I would mentor one of my children that came to me and told me this exact same thing that I was going through. And I told young 15-year-old Bill, I says, you know what? You're a good-looking kid. And I didn't think I was good-looking at that time. I had a lot of insecurities. And so I was speaking to that younger self. I said, you're a good-looking kid. You got such an amazing future ahead of you. You're going to go on to marry this amazing wife. You're going to, you know, you're going to be successful. Dreams that you didn't even think were possible are going to come true for you. You've got a great life ahead of you. I love you. So it's okay. Make sure that you tell your old self that you love them too, because very often that's what we're guilty of, is not loving ourselves. And forgiveness is an act of love. And so if you don't love yourself, it's pretty impossible, pretty hard to forgive yourself. That's it. That's the process. Just sit down, separate in your mind, and speak to your old self. Now, if it was something you did last week and now you know better and not to do that, and you're really trying to forgive yourself, it's kind of hard to imagine your younger self. But you have learned something, or you wouldn't be in the process of trying to let it go and forgive yourself, because if you hadn't learned anything, you wouldn't think you did anything wrong, right? So you've learned something there, and then you would imagine that maybe a sibling or a good friend or a coworker come to you and says, hey, I have this problem. This is what I've just done, and I just feel bad about it. What advice do you have for me? And then go ahead and speak to your self from last week or 2 weeks ago or whatever that was, if it's a more recent situation, as you would a coworker or a sibling or a dear friend, and mentor them and say, I forgive you, I love you. But make sure and say that to the other person in your head. And so I do this with my eyes closed, and I imagine this other part of me, my 15-year-old self or my 50-something-year-old self standing next to me, and I have that conversation. And then we're able to let go of that energy and these beliefs that are stuck in our brain, because we're not judging what we didn't know now with what we didn't know then with what we know now. And it can be that simple. Of course, there's other processes you can use, but this is the one that I found that works for forgiving yourself. So, if you really are ready to finally forgive yourself, put this to the test. I'd love to hear from you in the comments as to how this has worked for you. Have a great day. Thanks for joining us, and I do hope you go to our channel, our website, www.allthingspossible.biz, and join our community. Look around. A lot of great information there. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye. Oh, and hey, if you haven't had a chance to pick up my book, Shine a Light Within, 5 Steps to Lighten Your Soul Through Forgiveness, go ahead and go to the website, shinealightwithin.com, and pick up a copy for yourself. There is some great information in here, and it can change your life.